Hello, so we'll have a look at this game. It is quite interesting, the main theme of which would be not ending the game before it's actually over. And we can see this at all levels. A lot of the time we get relaxed when we have a very winning position, but that's precisely the moment that a lot of mistakes happen. So let's have a look. So first in the opening, white already made a small mistake on move 2. Of course, with these Benoni setups, the best is 99% of the time to take the space, and white generally has some advantage here. Now white could have lost the 1 against 2, he could have lost a central pawn, but black didn't go for this. So the game moved on. Here white has 3 developed pieces, but in a few moves that will be somehow dissipated. Now bishop c1, kind of comically white retreats all of his pieces, but okay, he then redevelops them. He takes some center, knight f6, both sides castle, knight h4, going for the f5 square. And here white had a good chance to get some advantage with knight f5, attacking this. This is a forcing move that has to be calculated, and it's not that easy for black to deal with this, because the knight is also hanging. For example, after castling, game over. And black's only move actually is queen g6, after which we can take this knight and continue with something like knight c4. And black's pieces are really badly coordinated. This is threatened, the knight is sometimes hanging, the e5 pawn might be hanging as well, and the white is on top here. Instead bishop c4 was played, which is also reasonable but not as good. Queen d6. Then both sides exchanged some pieces. We arrived at this position where it's about equal, but white can claim some pull due to his bishop. In general, a bishop is better than a knight in a position where pawns are both sides. Well, knight f6 happened, rook e1. White continued developing his pieces, exchanging a knight. And here white can say he's a little bit better, but it's nothing special. To improve the position, white will eventually have to play c3 or take space on the king side, both of which white managed to do, while black didn't really do anything in the meantime. So we will skip the next few moves. White took some space on the king side, which may be useful to eventually use squares on g6. A few moves later, a critical moment arose. Here, instead of black just redeveloping his pieces, which would be a very good habit in general, he decided to play b5, which vaguely has some point. Maybe he has a5, a4, but white is now going to open the position, and black's pieces are completely not ready for this. If the knight was here, then this wouldn't be much of a threat, because the knight would be able to recapture after the queen moves. But now it's not clear what black should do. He plays a5, but this may lose material. For example, like this. Rook c7 was played. White can also just try to win the pawn. There doesn't seem to be a good way to defend. Also, rook c5 is an idea in some positions. And the knight being on d8 doesn't really help black's cause. Rook c7 is also fine. Since the position has opened up, white's advantage has gone up because he has the bishop. Surprisingly, taking on e4 is a terrible mistake. Black should have moved the queen and then tried to redevelop his knight somehow. Maybe through here or through here if allowed, and also maybe exchange the very active rook. But after this is quite a good looking position. We can see that black can basically move nothing. The knight is completely trapped, the rook is trapped, this rook is also trapped. So now to win this position, white basically has to improve his position to the maximum and then start attacking stuff. Or alternatively, he can even try to attack like this, which seems reasonable enough. This eventually happened, bishop d5. This is a nice pattern to know, the bishop completely dominates the knight. Not that it's necessary in this case, but it's also good. King h7 and rook g4. So black can not move anything at all, and now white's position is completely winning. He proceeded to take an exchange, and while keeping all of his positional dominance. Again, white has to just improve his position to the maximum and completely complete the game. I would suggest just bringing the king. We can do this because black has absolutely no moves. He cannot move the rook anywhere, the knight can't go anywhere, and the king can't go anywhere either. So after something like king f1, black's basically only move is king h8, which doesn't really inspire much. Next move will be king h7. Instead, white tried to force stuff, rook c8, but this allows the knight to escape. And although white is still winning, this isn't as easy, though this should be quite simple. And then white continued with his king. He played f4. Black should probably exchange, but he plays e4, creating a small weakness here. Again, white brings his king, and eventually white should try to either get a winning pawn endgame or infiltrate with the rook to the 7th rank. So rook d4 happened. White did everything correctly. He got the e4 pawn, but now we can see that black has a slight glimmer of hope. He has the 2-on-1 majority on the queen side, although objectively this is completely winning and there's a lot of time until black becomes active with his pawns. We still have to keep a very good eye on this, since this is black's only chance. So white went to take this pawn on g7 to create a fast pawn. There's a 4-on-2 majority. b3, takes, and rook b7, which is good technique, putting the rook behind the pawn. But we can see this is absolutely black's only hope. And we can also sometimes question ourselves, how can we possibly not win this position with white? Well, the only chance is for this pawn to become a queen. Let's see what happens. Knight c4, rook b. This is good vision, this fork was threatened, and also there's a fork here, in case white takes. White doesn't have to take yet, he moves the rook, the pawn is controlled. Now b2 happens, and now white has only one move that still wins the game, though the move is quite simple, it's king d3. But how can we find this move? Well, we always have to think about what our opponent is trying to do. Here, at least for one moment, white's thought process slipped a little bit, and he played g5 in 2 seconds. Admittedly, he didn't have much time, he had a little bit over a minute, and he was playing without increment here. But I think it should be enough to ask ourselves what's black's idea, and as we can see after g5, black wanted to play knight b6 and win the game by promoting to a queen first. So this was quite an unfortunate game, unfortunate ending. White just needed one more good move to bring the king to stop the pawn, and then black will have absolutely no chance with the 4-on-2 majority. So this just serves to remind us that we cannot be too complacent in winning positions. Chess is a very difficult game, and it's basically possible to lose any position. So this is a good illustration of just that.